Access is there. Anyone who goes to any lab today, any college, your nearest engineering college, if you just go to that lab and say, I want to do this project, ask somebody, just without even knowing anyone, knock the door, access will come. I have seen a lot of stories I've learned from students themselves, not that I'm telling, that they have done a cold call to certain companies and they have actually gotten to do a final project which was actually presented in ISEF. So it is just the student needs to take that initiative and find their access. So go to any college, call up any company saying that I am a student, I want to do this project, you are working on a similar area, can you help me? Everyone is ready to help.
Hello and welcome to the STEM and Research podcast. Today we have Mr. Narayan Iyer with us, who's here to share a story with science education and promoting project-based learning.
Would you mind introducing yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm Narayan. I'm actually, as a passion, I actually run science fairs, INSEF Science Fair, the Indian Science and Engineering Fair. And I'm just part of it, just like anyone else, like a volunteer. And I'm actually running the fair with the help of a lot of people who are out there helping to get this fair running. So it's a kind of a fair which runs across India, and we have like 7 places where we run this fair as a regional fair, and the winners from that particular fair go to national fair, and we have the national fair, and the winners from that go to the international fair, which we are affiliated with some of the international fairs. So they just participate in that fair. So that's the quick outline of INSEF fair. Yeah.
So, as you mentioned, you're the president for Science Society of India. So, we're really curious about the inception of the society. So, how did it come to be the organization it is today?
Okay, not many people have asked this question. You're one of the few people who have actually asked this question. So basically, way back in 2006, when I was working for Intel, Intel had this initiative of with IRIS, the IRIS Science Fair, and someone from within Intel asked me if I'm interested in a science fair, just to volunteer as a judge for the science fair. And I was part of the research group at that point in time. And then I just volunteered it, not knowing what I'm getting into at that point in time. And then once I met the students way back in 2006, started liking that particular activity and started enjoying that particular activity in terms of interacting with the students, motivating them, whatever little bit I could, and then enjoying those activities. So 2007 also I continued. Then in 2007 I left Intel. So Intel asked me whether would you like to continue your passion, whatever you were interested in. So I said sure, I'll continue with that, whatever I was liking. So I continued being part of the IRIS National Fair, which was called earlier. And then in 2009, 2010, we were deciding that we need to go to more grassroots level rather than trying to have one national fair, one big show. Right? And that's how Science Society of India came into existence. There were 3 people: myself, Dr. Arnab Bhattacharya of TIFR, and Mr. Harish Bhatt, who is actually no more, but he was also part of the trust. And then we started this activity to actually start at the regional level, the INSEF regional fair that we call today. Earlier it was called as micro fair. So we wanted to go at the micro level and get those innovations out from all parts of India and then encourage the students and then get them to the national platform. So that's how it started as a very small initiative in terms of going at different local levels and trying to have a fair. And then it actually turned out that we had regional fairs, national fairs, and international fair affiliation. Everything just came as we kind of progressed.
That's really cool. So, you actually mentioned that just participating, like helping out with science fairs, was one of your passions. So, I'm wondering, is there any like personal motivation behind this, and like especially in founding SSI?
Yeah, so what happened was, I mean, one of the, I should say, this idea came from when I went to, as a part of IRIS, I went with the team looking at ISEF. Remember, ISEF is the affiliate fair from Intel. Earlier it was Intel, now somebody else has taken over. But I learned a lot from that international fair in terms of how they do the judging and how they actually methodically do things. And something came in me that we should adopt some of the best practices out there within India as well. So we localized. So once I saw those the practices which has been adopted by ISEF, I took some of those practices, learned from them, and then we localized it for our own things as to how to run at the local level. right from the judging, how they judge, and then how they actually have everything organized, right, in terms of even minute details of the organization. So some of the things which I learned from there and then adopted into the our local system, and that's how it's. I mean that was one of the things that I learned. And to tell you the original motivation behind this, not many people have asked this, is that during my high school kind of time, right, there were a lot of students, primary school, high school time. There were a lot of students who were very smart in terms of getting something done. They have made a lot of stuff, which I was amazed by. I mean, when they used to show in the class and what they have done and things like that, right? Now they are really project guys actually. I don't know where they are. They were not probably getting good marks or whatever, but they are really good innovators. It just that kind of thought came to my mind that we should do something for the kids who are my friends who need to get a platform to actually showcase their innovation. Then it will be a great thing. So that is something a very subtle thing which happened a long time back, but behind this whole thing. So to encourage those kinds of students, INSEF was born.
So this is a bit unrelated, and I wasn't planning on asking this, but since you mentioned that these people were not necessarily the best in the class academics wise, would you like to comment on how in India it's always related that if you're really good in academics, then you get into research? So do you personally think they're interrelated or are they independent?
Yeah, so one thing I want to be very clear that you cannot leave the academics part, right? So you have to get the academics part. You need to read the books. You need to know about stuff. You cannot ignore that part completely. Then say it's all jugaad. This guy doesn't know the science, but he does something like that. We have been kind of told it's a positive and negative both, right? My thing is you need to kind of have a science, but sometimes to learn the science, you can use a project as a means to learn something. So ideally, if there is a project behind something and then I'm actually doing a project and then learning science behind it, that's the best combination that one can ever get. So not to say that we have to read the research, we have to read some of those intricacies, we need to solve problems, those are all inherent part. But I wish if it was made in a much more interesting way as to solve a particular real life problem, we use this science concept and then things get, that would be the ideal combination. Yeah.
We've seen some changes that have been announced by the government, so hopefully things are going to get better.
Yes,
Yeah, I'm very bullish
but
about that.
yeah, I feel like there would be some way to go before it actually becomes like a commonplace part of it, but hopefully it does one day.
Yeah.
So INSEF is, I think, one of the most prominent activities that SSI does. So are there any other activities or like organizations that SSI is a part of?
Yeah, so basically our main motive is to actually promote science using science fairs. Other than that, workshops, whenever there's an invite to actually hold a workshop to motivate students, there are volunteers who would go to various places, remote places, to actually encourage the students to actually do something innovative. So beyond the science fair, mainly the other things that we focus on. I mean, not much. Mainly the science fair is the main thing for INSEF. Not that we have an army of people also. It's just a bunch of people who are trying to help and trying to make their little bit of whatever they can.
That's great. A bunch of people are making a bunch of difference. So, yeah, coming back to science fairs, like, could you tell us what you think the significance and advantages of project-based learning are?
Now, in general, when you are given a task to do, we are motivated to do the task, right? When you do a project, when the kids are doing some project, they are all busy with doing the project. When you give them a book, they are like, okay, I have to read this thick book. What? How many pages are there in this book? Right? This is like 350 pages. Oh my God, that kind of thing comes in, right? So project-based learning is the inherent way to actually motivate that students. Once the students is motivated to actually do some project and then learn science behind it, automatically the guy is going to read the books, going to Google the stuff that he wants for the project and what other people are saying. All those qualities that we expect a student to have will automatically come. We don't have to push the students. We don't have to push the students. Automatically these things will come because I'm trying to solve a particular problem. Whatever it may be. I'm doing a project, a craft project, also say I'm doing something like that. Right? Automatically you see students being busy doing that particular project. Similarly, any science-based project, we want more craft than science-based project rather than sticking something and doing stuff. We want students to do real hands-on work so that they understand the science behind it. Something would work, something would not work, and that would force them to actually learn science in a much enjoyable way.
Okay, so would you say that this is the vision of the Science Society of India?
Yes, that is the vision of Science Society of India, that we need people to do projects at all school level, student level. Everyone should be doing some project, some or other simple project. It need not be very high-fi project or anything like that. A simple project, simple thing as noting some data and coming with the data of whatever you have noted within last evening is an interesting project. Whatever that may be, you have to start with that particular thing, and then automatically the research-based mindset will come to people, and that would boom innovation.
Mm-hmm. So at this moment, I think we'll change the pace of this episode a bit and then like talk a bit about you and then probably come back to the science fair scene a bit later. So you've been involved in academic and corporate training for many, many years now. Would you be open to talking about your experience as a trainer?
Yeah, so actually, I took as a passion. I found my passion to become a trainer, to kind of inculcate some trainings to students to the topic which I like, right? And that would force me to learn also. Every day you have to keep learning things. Learning never ends. So what I realized was it's a good. I mean, it will force me to learn and be on the top of the subject, whatever the subject I'm going to train. Right? Have some basic knowledge, but to become trainer, I need to kind of excel and keep up to my knowledge. So overall, luckily, I was after quitting Intel, I was part of Intel's multi-core initiative, the processor initiative, and I was happy to be part of that particular initiative, and in which they were trying to encourage students to learn about computer architecture, the multi-core architecture, the processor architecture, and things like that. So I enjoyed that particular part of being with academia, right? But then when it came to what I mean, I moved to the corporate as well, right? When it comes to your existence, right? So finally, you ask this question: where does my money come from, right? So you actually, so the corporate actually it also turned out a very accidental thing. Somebody called me that, hey, are you willing to take a training on this topic? I googled you on this particular topic. So that actually started another door. Not that I had planned everything. A lot of things have started automatically without me being planning any of those sort. Right? So then I started doing giving trainings to various companies where people come in from the employees of the company, and then kind of giving training on various aspects of mainly programming related thing, which is my passion: design, object-oriented design, programming, and security. So those are the three things which I'm going to focus and give training.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's the quick path that I have taken. So I enjoyed both. Now academia is a little less. It's more of a corporate training now.
Mm-hmm. That's still really nice. So you mentioned multi-core technology like somewhere in the last point. So maybe for the viewers, you could just elaborate on it a bit and maybe explain what it is.
Yeah, so we know that the processor, we hear this dual core, quad core, we kind of keep hearing this in the Intel advertisement,
Yeah.
and all those kind of things. People hear about, so these are all multiple cores in a CPU. Like CPU is actually, if you just cut open the CPU, you will find like a multiple cores, like multiple processing units duplicated within the cores. You will see four of them in a quad core thing. So there are duplicated four cores are there, equivalent to what was originally was multiprocessor, where you have to have four different chips and four sockets had to be required, which was called as multiprocessor. So now you're hearing this multi-core instead of multiprocessor. I mean, it's not now. We have been quite a long. We started hearing these things. So basically, it essentially means that there are four cores inside that particular processor, which means it can do parallel processing at the same time using those four cores which are there. It's like you have got four people for you who can actually do the work for you, say for example, parallelly. Right? So, and things have all changed. When we started the programming, earlier programming what was all sequential serial, but now it's all about parallel programming. It's all sequential programming is long dead now. It's all about parallel programming, and we actually run say a particular, if I use the word threads, the context of execution in parallel. So two things can potentially run in parallel in real time. So that's the change that has already happened, and to kind of know about those things, computer architecture and all those things, I was part of those initiatives, and yeah, so and that's how we have come to this. So multi-core essentially means that there are many cores which are duplicated, and things can be done in parallel, in real time parallel, true parallelism.
Yep, that's pretty cool. Often we we hear these words, but we fail to wonder what exactly they mean. So that was pretty informative. Thank you for telling us that. So on a similar note, like, can you talk about your interests in software technology in general?
I mean, mine, this thing is right from my, if I go back, way too back, um, way back in late 80s sometime, right? When I was in 11th grade, right? So at that time, it started with a game. There was a game program which came in, right? So you actually, there was this cassette recorder you could play and then play and load it on the computer and then run the game, right? So that started, that was the original thing when my interest on those computing started, right? And then, so basically I could kind of hack that game with more, there were only 3 turns, and 3 turns you could never finish the game. So I accidentally realized that if it breaks in between, you could actually edit the program to have more number of chances for you to continue the game. So, and then you could save back the game and all those things. So that actually was the initial interest on the computing world, and luckily I could do computer engineering later on, which was my passion anyway. So, and that actually kind of things just followed in place as a pure luck. Not that I was super academically, but luckily I found a college which would offer me a computer engineering, and then I continued those things, and then learned a lot of things, and then I actually also was lucky to work for a company was like more of a system level stuff, like a system level programming in my initial work. So it's very important to actually choose your first job, because that would dictate your full career. So first job, I'm just going by what has happened to me. Maybe it may happen different things for different people. Luckily, by chance, I got a call from that company, and I just happened to join that particular company. And there, I learned a lot in terms of doing much lower level stuff in terms of writing a debugger for an Intel processor and things like that. And that has kind of grounded my understanding. And still, those understanding is still valid today also. Nothing is of that thing is lost, even though 20 years or 25 years may have elapsed, but everything is still the ground level, the way it's working is exactly the same. Yeah. So
Okay.
I mean, I would actually, yeah, that was that's how it started, and then somehow it continued.
So you just mentioned something about systems. On a similar note, you consulted with Intel higher education team for the embedded systems program, I think so. So I think this question will be appropriate. I'm just curious. Do you think embedded systems or the Internet of Things is going to have an increasingly impactful role in the future?
Yeah, again, I'm not a forecasting person.
Mhm.
I'm a very low level technology person. If you tell me how this registers work, how these chips work, I can tell you that. But in general, my guess would be considering like things that if you just see around how many things are there which are so much connected to internet, right? And those things are growing, right, as we speak, right? Definitely, it's going to kind of take over this thing, like number of devices that's going to be connected to the internet is going to significantly increase. And IoT is also, and embedded also are part of those things whenever we do things. So something that I feel that yes, it is going to grow from here. It's not going to. We are just seeing a tip of iceberg at this point in time in terms of the growth of those things, and the need that people will find for a device to be connected on internet and be there on that particular premise is going to significantly grow. Whatever you do, and you'll find that all those things is going to happen. Say, for example, already things are happening, smart metering and all those things are happening, water meter, smart meter, all those things which actually collect data, and then so that nobody has to physically come and look at, say, take a reading of your electric meter, whatever has happened. And not only these, all those things that would convenience ourselves is definitely going to see a huge boom as the prices are also dropping and technology is being accessible to common people. So it's going to see definitely is going to see a boom, and new usages may also emerge out that we are not able to kind of envisage at this point in time. We're not able to imagine what kind of usages will come. So that would be the innovation thing if somebody can figure out earlier.
Okay. Definitely hearing from someone who's worked in the low level is also, I think, very valid because you sort of know how the nitty-gritties of how everything works. So thank you for answering that.
Yeah, okay, cool.
So I think we brought this up a lot of times already, but you worked at Intel and actually for a pretty long time, if I'm not wrong, around 8 years. So during your time at the Intel Research Labs, your primary focus was storage virtualization. Can you probably just talk about what it is?
Yeah, so remember that this is way back in 2005, 2006, during that time, where it was, and there were this buzz about virtualization. Right now, virtualization is almost like a reality. Everything, even your Android phone, is running on a hypervisor, a virtual layer. So every application is running on that virtual layer. So what we did at kind of Intel was looking into how we can exploit the virtualization technology for our for the Intel's processor. Right? So we did some experiments in terms of, it was more of an engineering work, and then led to some kind of patenting at a later stage, right? In terms of what we tried it out and things like that. So running two operating system on a particular system on a particular computer, right, was something that we were looking into in terms of research at that point in time. Now the direction may have changed, or even something would have been commoditized and things like that. But it was an essential thing wherein you could run a Linux and Windows both coming up together, right, on the same system at the same time. So you could actually have the Linux running on the as a backend system, Windows running as a primary OS. So and we did something in terms of partitioning the memory, and that's why we got the patent of how do you partition the memory so that this part is owned by Linux operating system and the other part is owned by the Windows operating system. So how do you partition the memory? We, with bunch of from some of my colleagues who are kind of more involved than me, and we in terms of, we got the patent for those system virtualization. The partitioning systems were there at the hardware level, where so how do you do an address partitioning? So there are a lot of technologies that Intel has embedded within their processors to make the virtualization happen at the hardware level, which means that when you are actually running a certain operating system, you can run, like you would have seen this virtual machine, virtual box, where you could run a Linux on a Windows machine, as simple as that. That's software virtualization. So you could run the guest OS on a host machine of Windows. So all those things, we were looking at different problems in terms of doing a hardware partitioning, which means at the hardware level, you will not be able to access the other operating system resources versus what being accessed by a particular operating system. So having a clean partitioning mechanism was something that we were looking into. And yeah, after that, a lot of growth has happened. You would have seen Intel's the various technology, VTD, VTX technology, which enables virtualization at the hardware level. So that's what we were. I was also part of one of the group to do that research.
Okay, so let's come back to the topic of the science fairs. So Anvesha and I both attended the IRIS National Fair this year. So we were just curious about your experience chairing the fair. So it's sort of a specific question, but what has been one of your best experiences or moments with the students that attended the fair?
I mean, when you just talk to the student and get to know about what they have done, right? To me, that part itself is a great experience, and you just enjoy that particular thing, right? You just enjoy talking to students and trying to know what they have done, right? And it doesn't matter whether the student is a winning student or something like that, but just that the student has come to that extent where students have worked hard to actually do some work, right? And trying to understand from the student as to what they have done is a great experience. I mean, the whole judging part is just, I just love interacting with the students to know more about what they have done, not from a judge perspective that I'm evaluating somebody, but just to know what the student have done and encourage. If by asking some question, if that person gets encouraged, that's the biggest gift that I would say. From my perspective, in terms of judging a particular thing, but more of learning happens from to me actually when I talk to a student. A lot of learning happens, and I enjoy that part, and I can't miss that part. I can't wait for a fair to happen. So I just want to talk to a lot of students and just kind of to know what they have done and expand my own horizon on how the students are thinking and what are the different ways that I can, if there's any small way I can motivate the students, that's a great thing that I could ever do in my life. Yeah.
Okay, so you mentioned that you also went to ISF, right? So
Yes.
from your perspective, how was the experience? Because we usually ask the students and it's definitely transformative for them, but you said that it did have some kind of an influence on you. Maybe could you talk more about that?
Yeah, so ISEF actually, I went twice, I think. So it was an eye opener for me. The first ISEF was an eye opener for me on how vast a particular fair is. And our students, they may have come from rural place. They may be very kind of the way they don't expose themselves in terms of they're not flamboyant enough to actually brag about their things, even though they are conservative. Still, they did very well in various projects that we had sent during that time. I think 2009, 2010. Right? So yeah, so it was an eye-opening experience for me in terms of understanding how the whole thing works, trying to meet some people out there and trying to meet some of those academicians out there, and then trying to learn from other people's different countries' culture and things like that. It was an eye-opener for me in terms of how a fair should be held. And I took a lot of learnings from them. And then luckily I got a chance to go as a speaker there, and I told what we implemented in our. And I could actually learn from there and implement within as a part of that, implement within Iris itself. Some of the small things like even scheduling that particular student's timetable, making sure that the judges come on that, making sure that all those things matter a lot of running a science fair. How meticulously you're actually planning things so that there are no surprises. All those things, the learning that and implement. Actually, I gave back to the community, saying that how we run our fair and how we have changed what we have improvised on what probably ISEF did in terms of how certain things that work well for our local context. So that was brought up, and it was an interesting experience sharing those things. So I could actually give back to the community also, and it was a nice experience. I enjoyed it. Yeah.
Okay, so since IRIS is the feeder fair for ISF, we were wondering about what do you think the difference between the quality of the projects like that students present at IRIS and ISF is. Did you feel like there was much of a difference?
Quality of students, our Indian students versus quality of projects from, you're asking that? Quality of projects of the.
Yeah, just like a comparative.
Could be reframed to that, yeah. But more like, is Iris Science Fair really a great representation of what global research amongst high schoolers looks like?
I think so. I mean, in terms of when, actually, one thing, you know what, when we were running IRIS, to tell you, some people came back to us saying that you guys are really doing real high school projects, because some of the projects which we see, right, it's like it's just mind-boggling. It's too vast. Even some of our best labs won't have those equipments, right? So having those equipment, student actually telling about certain project, right? So it's not everyone's kind of capability to do that. But our projects were, this is again listening from some of the people who came back and told us, saying that you are at much ground level. Your projects are at much ground level where people are doing something hands-on and they're doing something innovative and trying to come up with some idea in terms of getting into this thing. So from that perspective, I think ours is probably, I mean, including some other countries also. Some of the other countries I have seen, they are also kind of quite grounded. From, because I don't know about them, I can only say that ours is probably more ground level. Things may have changed over the years, but they were more ground level projects where a student has worked on a particular thing and then showing something. Whereas our students in, say, students from other countries, say US itself, right? They may have much access to a lab or a facility where they are much more kind of at a little higher level, working with another guide already. Those kinds of things. So our difference being like a lot of students are much at a ground level working on certain things, whereas other people may have already have a built up access to a lab and they just join the lab and they understand from that. Not that they are extremely bright students, have a very high regard for all INSEP participants, and they may have got facility and they have got interest to do that also, and they actually go ahead and exhibit that project.
Okay, so do you have any ideas as to how we could create more access for students in our localities, in our country in general, to maybe like just to have more access in general?
Access is there. Anyone who goes to any lab today, any college, your nearest engineering college, if you just go to that lab and say, I want to do this project, ask somebody, just without even knowing anyone, knock the door, access will come. I have seen a lot of stories I've learned from students themselves, not that I'm telling, that they have done a cold call to certain companies and they have actually gotten to do a final project which was actually presented in ISEF. So it is just the student needs to take that initiative and find their access. So go to any college, call up any company saying that I am a student, I want to do this project, you are working on a similar area, can you help me? Everyone is ready to help. The company, so maybe a small company, they are much more ready to help you. When they see a student waiting for you, they will come and help you in whatever way. So access is there, we need to use those accesses. People need to shed their to restrict themselves and go and ask for help, and help will come. And people who are go-getter do that and they get the help, and they somehow are able to make their way through and then get whatever they want. So you need to probably make a mission of yourself. If you are a student watching this particular thing, you need to make a mission that I need to do this particular thing, and then I'm going to do everything to make that mission happen, and just work towards that mission, and it automatically the doors will open, and it's just mind-boggling how things will work out.
Definitely. I concur from personal experience as well. So now on a similar note again, for students already at college, what would you say is the best way for them to get into research or innovation?
They have much more need to do it, right? I hope during this uh, COVID period, they have got 2-3 months out there not doing anything. You have a lot of stuff, you can do it at home, you can build stuff, you can do, if you are based on your interest, you have that much amount of time to do it for yourself, for your interest, what you're working on. This is an opportunity to do something that you are interested in and work on it, whatever maybe a project, it may be a research, whatever the interest that interests you, whatever be the topic, be mechanical engineering, computer engineering, whatever the topic that interests you, this is a good opportunity to work on that, design it, and build something. This is a great opportunity. You're not because you have a lot of time for yourself. This is the time to introspect and get your creativity out. It's a great opportunity. That's what I feel. I hope students are doing that.
Yep, definitely very inspiring words that should move students.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, before we move on to the next section, I would just like to add like one comment on your previous answer about cold emailing people. I think, as Arnav already mentioned, most people who actually end up going to ISEF just like cold emailed or cold called their current lab advisor or professor, and that's really how it works.
Yes.
And yeah, I think the biggest problem is people just don't know that even as a high schooler, you can go out there and do research, both on the professor's part and the student's part. So that was really nice
Yes.
that you mentioned that. So
Yeah.
as we talked about in the first, like absolutely the first section of this episode, INSEF, the Indian National Science and Engineering Fair, is one of the country's biggest science fairs right now. So could you tell about how that was started? So like, was that in a different phase than the SSI, or were they started concurrently?
So as I said, like when we started at a much lower level, we called it a micro fair, and then started expanding. Started with 3 places, then increased to 4 places, 5 places, 7 places, 8 places at different regions, part of the country, and it's all pure volunteerism. Meaning, there's no money flow between anywhere. It's all people are volunteering for it. Students get a chance to participate for free. So the idea was anyone in any part of India having an idea, we will give a platform to showcase that particular idea. That's the goal of INSEF. And I mean, though we have a long way to go, I won't say that we have still long way to go. Over the years, we have to continue doing these things. And then slowly, it will, at one fine day, maybe 10, 20 years later, realize that the dream is achieved. Dream is not yet achieved. It's not. We are still way behind. We need to do. We need to have this problem of we have got like so many fairs. How do you manage them? I would rather have that problem, and then I would say that dream is close to successful. But right now we are still at the infancy stage. We need to work more.
So now that we're on the point of development of INSEF, so INSEF started in 2012, if I'm not wrong, and it sees additions of new affiliated fairs every single year. So personally, as the founder and the president, how has it been for you to see INSEF grow to the heights it has?
Yeah, I mean, it is something that once you volunteer for something, people recognize that you are volunteering. You don't have any other intent. You have pure volunteerism at work, and automatically you will magnetize people around you who are of the same type, and they also want to do something for the society. So they come and host. They say we are ready to host the regional fair. Most of the regional fairs are run by the volunteers who are an institution or an organization or anyone for that matter, right? So it's mainly what we are seeing is pure volunteerism at play, because it has to be done free. They need resources, they need to spend some money, and they actually end up spending the money to host the various regional fairs. And so that way, it's just that it is going from one. So it's a very good feeling that it has improved from 3 to 8 now. We want to see it more. We want more people to come to us saying that we want to host the regional fair. Thereby, we can actually help them host the regional fair in their region. So hopefully, by doing this, it will get more popularity. People will know about it. A lot of people don't know about it also. So those things are there, and hopefully people will know about it, and actually they will get they get to participate in these fairs, and they will be the great innovators of our country.
Mhm. So I remember like sometime during this interview today, you mentioned that organizing regional fairs into like one whole unit itself is a challenge, and like definitely starting a science fair comes with it. Okay, hold on, we'll cut right there. My neighbor just honked outside.
Okay.
Uh,
Yeah, that's fine.
yeah, so I'll just restart from there. Cut that part out for the editor. Starting a science fair definitely comes with its own challenges, especially when you're trying to operate at a national level. So, what are some challenges that you have seen as an organizer for INSEF?
Yeah. So the first thing is like at certain point you need funds, right?
Mhm.
And that's not easy to come. Right? When you're starting a non-profit organization, it's actually a loss-making thing. You have to remember that. People just say it's a non-profit, but actually speaking, it's a loss-making thing. But we love that thing, and we enjoy doing those things, and that's why we work towards our own passion and work towards it. So sometimes it's difficult to raise funds in terms of getting the national fair going, especially if, say, for a needy student, you're organizing the travel abroad. You want to make sure that you realize that the person doesn't have the capacity to, say, pay for their fare, and we need to organize funds for that. We cannot have that person pay from their own pocket because there's a lot of pressure going on. So we do kind of make sure that the person who is really in need of money based on their economic strata, we actually make sure that the person is funded, right, in terms of for their travel to the international fair. So and luckily, when at that time is the most stressful time because it's not easy to get fund. But luckily, having people like Arnab around you, I mean, he actually helps a lot in terms of getting at the time of need, whenever we need the fund. I mean, the person I go to, and he actually helps in terms of getting some of the funds. And we did get some of the funds from IBM. We got some sponsorship from Tata Chemicals. We got some sponsorship from some colleges. We have got some sponsorship and things like that. So that's the only stressful part. But other than that, it's more of less of money thing, but it's more of kind of getting it working, getting organizing it.
So, what are recent goals for INSEF? Like maybe in the next couple of years, absolutely, like in the upcoming years.
Yeah, so our constant quest is to kind of make sure more regional fairs are being held,
Mhm.
and we don't have army of people to make it happen, right? So it has to work through volunteerism. That's the best part. That's the best way anything can work out, right? So if you pay somebody to do some organize some fair, it's not going to work out. It has to be built in with the local region where they have an interest to host a particular fair, and they come to us saying that we want to host a fair. That's the best relationship we can ever have, rather than we trying to say that, okay, this place doesn't have a regional fair, let's have that regional. So it's something that we just want it to see grow over the years. Again, it's not something as easy, but as we see the number of entries going up, I mean, we'll see like in 3 years, say 15 regional fairs at different places being organized, and that would be a great thing for us in terms of having those fairs in different places of the country. So but then yeah, again, we will continue to do this thing. You just have to keep doing stuff, and other things will automatically happen. You don't really neither we have the kind of manpower to actually go to different places, having coordinators and all those things who are in a regular science fair. They actually go to different places and actually like promote the science fair in terms of this science fair is happening. We don't have that kind of bandwidth, neither that kind of people who can actually do these works. So it's all, one has to go to Google and just science fair. If you search, I mean, Science Society shows in the top, and you see how to participate. Everything is out there, and one can just come in and participate. So we hope that as more and more awareness of people who kind of search internet to do something, they will all kind of happen. And as more people, students join in, there will be a need for people to join from a particular region. It makes sense to have a regional fair in that region, and automatically things will develop in that form, just like it has been happening since last few years. Just hope that it will happen in that.
Okay, so for some of the viewers watching out here, like we hope me and Anvesha are trying to do our part in promoting these kinds of things. So even if one viewer here gets to know about INSEF and participates, it's going to be worth it for us. So for them, could you please explain how the whole participation process works for INSEF?
I mean, participating in INSEF is kind of very simple and transparent, right? So basically, any students can go online and submit their project, right? Whatever the abstract that they have created, submit the abstract. It goes through a review, right? In terms of people looking at the particular submission and seeing what are whether it's, we also Google the work to see if a similar work is done, or what is the similar work, what is the difference. We also try to evaluate what is the difference of work, what is done already versus what is there. If that is not clear, we actually ask the students saying that, hey, we're not able to find the difference. Can you tell us more about it? Right? It's a great thing that students are doing that particular work, not to kind of say that at least the students have gone and done looked at the existing work and done a particular work, but sometimes it is blatantly copied, right? Then we don't take those projects. So it goes through one level of filtration, and then we actually announce who are the selected projects, right? Which are actually based on a submission deadline. We actually announce a particular selected project, and we also tell the students why their project was not selected, right? Because why is, for us, it's very simple, right? They just have to call me. I have my phone number out there. Anyone calling me at any point in time asking me why my project is not selected, I feel happy for that student. That at least he has something to ask. At least they have a path to ask somebody why my project was not selected. So I just open the Excel spreadsheet. I say, give me some time. I need to start off my computer and open the Excel sheet and find out, hey, the comment mentioned here is so and so, because you have done this, or because this was already done, and you have kind of copied the whole abstract from this paper. We also sometimes send that particular thing. The whole abstract has been copied from a particular thing. We tell the student that why don't you do something by yourself, and we give a good reasoning of why it has been not selected. We have to also be convinced. It's easy to select. On a benefit of doubt, we actually select the student. There's a fight between people, reviewers. We say, okay, if one reviewer also feels that no, the person should be selected, unless there's a strong reason not to, we go into a selection mode. But so for the projects which are not selected, we actually give that open, transparent system wherein somebody can call and ask why my project is not selected, and we can explain to that student. And that makes me feel very proud that somebody can call me and actually ask. So that makes it very transparent also. You don't know why some project gets selected, why the other projects doesn't get selected. So it's something that I have to be convinced for not selecting a project, and we can give that same answer to that person. So that way it makes it more transparent.
I think that is very impressive. Like I'm pretty sure I've participated in a couple science fairs over the last few years, and so has Arnav. But we have never seen this happening, and this is definitely something very unique to INSEF, and it's so good that this happens. So it's really nice.
Any result that we announce, we say that if you have questions regarding this, call this number, and that's my number actually.
Yeah, it's definitely very inspiring to know how you're so committed and passionate about this, that you're just volunteering yourself into it. Like it's something that's genuinely inspiring for us, and we hope some of the viewers too. So as an incentive for someone who might be watching this and wants to participate in INSEF, could you just maybe talk briefly about like the levels of the fair? Like you mentioned that there was an international level as well.
Yeah. So at the regional level, I mean, start with something small. I mean, we need not have to kind of solve global warming problem or something like that. We start with something small which is bothering you. Right? Anything that you see, maybe a very small problem, just start with that. No need to wait for a big problem, and figure out what problem I'm going to solve. Right? So my take on this thing is start with any problem that you are facing today, and you have done something to improve it. Whatever it may be a very minimal incremental innovation. You will get a platform to actually showcase what you have done. A very small incremental work also kind of you will get a platform. And things start with small, always starts with small, then slowly it grows. So once you have kind of sorted out a small problem, then you realize that it's a big field. Now I can look into those fields, and then you can expand your project. But don't get hung up on the fact that I'm not getting a problem statement. I'm hung up with that thing that, oh, what should I do? Just think about what is the problem that I want, that's bothering me, that I can solve within my nearby region, within my own house. There's some problem that I want to solve. How do I solve it? Can I come up with a mechanism? Can I come with some innovative mechanism to actually solve certain problems? It may not be efficient, it may not be the best, but still it is slightly different, works and suits your local environment, whatever the environment may be. But start with something small and think how I can solve the problem. Come up with that particular design thinking, and then internet is there. You are very lucky to search. So copy doesn't mean that we should not refer to internet. We need to see what are the prior art which is already there. What is the prior work which is already there, right? So learn from those things. You can also kind of understand how the things work from using that particular problem statement, and come up with your own solution, your own small solution. And then you will realize that as you keep doing it, that project has expanded, right? So don't wait for a big problem to show up. Start with something very small. And if there is an innovation out there in that small problem, the way you have solved the problem, you will get a platform. You can call up and ask why my project is not selected. Here is that incremental innovation. And we might be, even if we did not understand that, that's very less likelihood, but if we might make mistake also. So if you did not understand, we will get you in if you are able to prove that that particular innovation which was not clear in your abstract. So we are open to those things. Start with small thing, and then slowly it will expand and it will become really big. So no need to wait for that big problem to solve. That's what my take would be.
Okay. So, what should be the very first step for students who want to get involved in research or innovation in general, not just for like a competition?
Yeah. So first thing is, there are a lot of problems. We know that. People like me did not do our part during my schooling or my college days, I think, right? We just ignored the problems, right? We continued to ignore the problems, and we said this is a part of life, this is a way of life, right? So there are two things. One is you can take into an activism part, right? Challenging, questioning everything and to everyone. Right? Take that as an activist. You're seeing that a rise in activism also. You can take as an activist role, which is questioning why is this way working this way, why is this? It's not in a solution space. Right? So my take on this thing would be, yes, it's good to question. You always have to question. If I have a solution, this is not the way, here is my solution. So go with a solution in mind, right? Because just asking question doesn't help anyone. It goes into a negativity. So go question yourself always. Go with a solution in mind. Here's the best way that I have come up with, or here's the way that my recommendation is. And then keep asking that question. Whatever you see, whatever the problems that you see, have a solution. Think about the solution, right? Then what will happen? You will always have a solution for a problem. Then you'll always be in the solution space. Then people will say, okay, you need solution, go to this particular person. And that's a very good quality to have, because even in a company, right, you'll find that in an organization, you'll find that some people are always being questioned. People are gathering around one person who is always in need. People are, hey, do you have a few minutes? I just want to talk about a problem. And why? Because that person is able to give solutions. So try to be that go-to person who will be with the solution. Nobody will go to a person who's always complaining, right? Nobody wants to be that. Let's stay away from that guy. It's always complaining. Adds to negativity, right? So my this thing is question everything. We need to question everything, but then have a solution for that question. Just mere questioning, I mean, it's of no use. It just kind of leads to more negativity, I think, personally. So have a solution, work towards that solution, and you will get your path.
Definitely. So this year, INSEF is going to be online. So what are your thoughts on that? Do you think this would increase participation, decrease participation?
So a lot of, I mean, we know that we will have to, the way it was going, shaping up, we knew that we have to go online, because there's no way we can have a real kind of science fair, so we need to go online. Now, my suspicion is we might see a decrease in this. This is my again my hunch that we might see a decrease in participation because that's the nature of people. We like to meet, we like to go and then go somewhere and we do things like that. So online doesn't have that part of it. But people who are really interested will again participate, and the quality may be higher probably, but probably a lesser number with a higher quality is my hunch. I hope I am proved wrong, and I've been bombarded with a lot of projects comes in. It's a great thing to have, but it is again going by a pure, without any reasoning, a hunch that we might see a lower submissions because we are pure. It's going to be purely online, and that the regional fair people generally motivate the local region to participate. That may also be missing. Now students have to be highly motivated to actually go online and participate, or the guides have to take the students to participate. So my assumption is we might see a lower participation, but I'll be happy to get it proved wrong. I want it to be proved wrong actually.
Okay, so for any of the viewers who are watching, we'll link in the INSEF website and all that stuff in the description. So please prove sir wrong.
Yeah, you'll find the
Yes.
deadlines there and like procedure to submit. So yeah, please go and submit there. Um, so I think now we'll move to like more general questions about your opinion in general. So what improvements do you think we could make in our society, or more specifically the education system, so that more children are involved in this path of project-based learning?
Yeah. So I think one thing is to start with you, whoever you are, right? We cannot look for other people and say make improvement in that system, this system. We have to improve from, it has to come from within, saying that I need to do something different, right? So everyone needs to play that role. There's no like this guys tell us that what to do. We have to do something different. We need to do something to make that change. So it has to come to within yourself, everyone, for every individual, probably every country. Right? We need to think about what improvement that I can make. What is it that I can make? Can I go to a school and then teach them? I'm a specialist in this particular field. I've been working for 20 years. Can I just go to a nearby school and ask them, can I talk about something to motivate the students? It should come from people. So any adults or even students who are watching and they have certain expertise in certain topic, they should see that can I help my society by going to a nearest school and just say that go talk to the principal that I want to talk about in assembly. I want to talk about certain topic that is of my interest. Will you give me a 15-minute, 30-minute time slot? I mean, it should start with, it can be started as simple as that. So it should start from yourself rather than waiting for somebody to make a sea of a change of improvement. Right? So also, I mean, the culture of doing projects has to be imbibed. So if you're a parent, you need to kind of somehow tell the students, let's actually work on a project. Right? Let's actually have a team. As a parent, you can actually motivate your kid to actually be together, mingle with them, and work on a project right, jointly, so that the learning experience improves. As a teacher, if you have the bandwidth, you can go to the students and say, let's do this project. I see you always are tinkering about something. You are a good student to do a project. As a teacher, I would like them to actually take those students who are really tinkering type. They're always asking questions, and teacher like that. Most of the teachers would like any question that's an interesting question being asked. They have not thought through. Take those students and then work with them and to do certain projects. Maybe you have to drive the students. The students may not have the path to do these things or may not have the right guidance to do these things. So as a parent, you can do as a work with the students. As a teacher, you can work with the students. As a student, you can go hang out with some peers. Think that hey, let's do some project this year. Let's try to do something. Like have a discussion. Think that let's try to do something. Let's actually brainstorm and we'll do something. Start that discussion, saying that let's brainstorm and do something. Rather than some education system is going to change and change my life. That's not going to happen. Change has to be within ourselves. So if anyone takes that initiative, then you will finally you realize that the whole the path of your multiple doors open and things are just different just by taking those few steps. Even from the teacher's perspective, right? Teachers also get recognized. A lot of teachers have got like state award and things like that, right? Because they did beyond their work just teaching versus they actually help students to do projects. So it's a great opportunity for teachers also to showcase their ability. So it's I mean, something that I mean, everyone needs some or other motivation to do certain things. So those may be the motivation to do certain things wherein you can actually be regarded as a teacher who's helping in innovation and things like that. So I would say that we have an opportunity. Everyone has to do their part, and automatically the system around you will change. You just have to work towards that.
So we're at the end of this conversation. So to summarize, what is one piece of advice you want the viewers to walk away with?
If you are a student, pick up a problem and just submit that. Work on something. Just merely submission of problem will not help. Pick up a problem and work on it. If you're not able to do it by yourself, sometimes you need your friends. Have one more friend, 2 people can participate. Work on that particular project and then come up with some ideas. And you need to work on the project. Just by having ideas will not work. And submit this is the problem statement. You have worked on this particular thing. Give the proof of your work and submit to the INSEP, and you will find that your journey is completely different. If you're a teacher, talk to your one of your students, tell them that they can participate. Here's an opportunity. If you're a parent, talk to your kids saying that, hey, how about doing some projects this year? And do something that interests both of us. Find the interest of your child and do something that interests you. So everyone, there's a great opportunity, and I would like to see more and more projects coming in, and it will enhance your own learning on that particular topic, whatever the project is. So we wish you all the best for all the people who are going to apply for INSEP, and look forward to all the entries.
Okay, that's a hopeful note to end on. So Mr. Narayan Iyer, thank you so much for joining us today, and thanks to our audience for tuning in. We will see you in our future episodes.
Thanks, and all the best for you guys. You guys are doing a great job. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.